Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into some pretty intense reports coming out of Mexico. It looks like a full-blown war has just been declared by one of the most powerful cartels against the state itself. Things are literally on fire.
So let's jump right in. The sources we're looking at, wow, they don't mince words. We're seeing these incredibly dramatic declarations right from the get-go. And they're not talking about just a few isolated incidents. They're painting a picture of a nation completely consumed by crisis. So, the big question is, right? What on earth could have triggered this level of nationwide chaos? To get a handle on it, we've got to look at what's being reported from the ground. What was the spark that lit this firestorm, seemingly overnight? Okay, so what we're seeing is this, a wave of violence that is just terrifyingly coordinated. And this isn't just happening in one city. The reports describe a firestorm erupting all at once across the country. We're even talking about major tourist destinations, which are now apparently on complete lockdown. And when you look at the details, it's pretty staggering. The scale of this is just, wow. We're hearing about gunmen setting up roadblocks, pulling people out of their cars and just torching them. Buildings are being set on fire, even a Costco. They even reportedly stormed the international airport in Guadalajara. Yeah, this is not random. This is a message, and it's a powerful one. Things escalated so fast that the U.S. government had to step in immediately. The State Department issued a security alert, basically telling any Americans in the area to shelter in place and stay put. I mean, that's essentially a code red, and it just underscores how dangerous this is for absolutely everyone, whether you're a tourist or a local. Okay, so we've seen the chaos. Now for the why. What could possibly be the trigger for all of this? Well, according to all the sources, it all comes back to one single event, a super high-stakes military operation that just took a kingpin off the board. And this is the guy right here. The reports say it all started when Mexican security forces went after Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, known everywhere as El Mencho. The word is he was neutralized, so either killed or captured. And make no mistake, this guy was the absolute top dog of the powerful Jalisco New Generation Cartel, the CJNG. And just to give you an idea of how big a deal this guy was, look at that number, $15 million. That's the reward the U.S. State Department had on his head. That puts him in the same league as the most wanted terrorists and criminals on the planet. But here's the twist. You'd think taking out the leader would be the end of it, right? Nope. According to our sources, it was like kicking a hornet's nest. It unleashed the full, terrifying power of his entire organization. And it really makes you ask that question, who is actually in charge in Mexico? And check this out. This quote, it's reportedly from a phone call where El Mencho himself is threatening a Mexican police chief. Now, we've bleeped out the language, but you get the idea. I mean, the sheer nerve to do that just shows you the level of intimidation we're talking about. The cartels, as the sources claim, basically treat law enforcement like they work for them. Yeah, and the CJNG, this is not your local street gang, not even close. The sources describe it as this massive global criminal empire. They're one of the two big superpowers in the Mexican drug trade, constantly at war with their biggest rival, the Sinaloa Cartel. And this is maybe the most critical part to understand, how these guys are armed. We are talking about a full-on paramilitary force. Sources say they have military-grade weapons, these homemade armored narco tanks, and a fighting force estimated at 30,000 troops. They're not just a bunch of criminals. They're essentially a private army. So what you end up with is what the sources are calling a narco state. On paper, sure, the government is the official authority. But the reality on the ground in huge parts of the country, the real power, the people who actually control the territory, the police, the politicians, it's the cartels, using a mix of bribes and just pure terror. Which brings us back to, why now? I mean, why go after a guy this powerful right at this moment, knowing the kind of chaos it would unleash? Well, the sources we're looking at suggest this wasn't just a Mexican decision. They're pointing the finger at pressure coming from the United States. Now, this is interesting. The videos we analyzed are citing former President Trump, who apparently said he directly pressured Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum to get tougher on the cartels. He even claims that he offered to help, but that she initially resisted the idea. And the sources kind of build on that narrative. They claim that President Sheinbaum really didn't want this fight, but that the pressure from the Trump administration basically forced her hand.
And then there's this other pretty big claim that U.S. Special Forces were involved, at least by providing the intelligence that made the operation possible. So, where does this leave us? Let's talk about the fallout and the huge questions this whole thing raises, not just for Mexico, but for the U.S. too. Well, for one, the Mexican government is mobilizing, big time. We're seeing military convoys rolling into Jalisco and other states. That's a pretty clear sign that they are digging in for a long, brutal fight. Nobody thinks this is the end. They think it's just the beginning. And the sources are pretty clear. This is not just a Mexico problem. They make the argument that it's actually the cartels who control the U.S. southern border, not the Mexican government, and that this is a huge national security threat to the U.S. Plus, there's a growing fear now that in retaliation for alleged U.S. involvement, the cartels might start targeting American citizens for kidnapping. So when you boil it all down, that's the big question, isn't it? They took out a major kingpin, sure. But was this a successful operation that cut the head off the snake? Or did they just kick the hornet's nest and start a war that's going to be far bigger and bloodier than anything we've seen before? Right now, nobody knows. And that's the scariest part.